Hey guys, we are live, I hope. Hello to the people already in the chat. This is something new that we are trying out for the podcast and trying to do a live stream version. And already I've noticed a few things have been going a bit weird where the cameras disappeared, but yeah. So as you can see, I have some people with me as well. I have John, who is my usual pain in the back, co-host on the podcast. Hey, John.
Yeah, the furniture, right?
Yeah, and John is that one there, just in case anyone's wondering. And joining us for the first time is a mutual friend of ours who is an absolute geek the same as us, and that is Sam, who's just below me on the video. Hey, Sam.
Hi, guys.
So hopefully everything is working. The sound seems to be working on my side as well. So we thought we'd attempt to do the podcast live. And I thought I'd test out to see if I could actually get things to work properly. So looking at that there, I've pushed the button and it's actually brought up the reference as well. Things are actually looking like they work. It's amazing. And if anybody is here in the chat, please drop us a message. Let me see if this works as well. I'm going to try and say hello there. You know, because you got to go, hello, Obi-Wan. Hello there. So, yeah,
General
it looks
Kenobi.
like everything is working, which means we can actually have a live podcast every week at the same time, which means you guys can get involved. So really excited about this, that so far, fingers crossed, everything's working. Watch after we've done this whole podcast, none of it's recorded. I'm just guaranteeing that's going to happen. But no, thank you for joining us. Thank you if you're watching this after live as well. Again, we appreciate you guys as well. It's just we won't respond to the messages as much. But yeah, so our decision today was to talk about Loki, the new Disney show. Indiana Jones 5 has begun filming just down the road from me, actually. We've got a Witcher news coming out. We have E3 right now. Xbox is doing their huge big show, which I'm devastated I'm not watching, but we might talk about it right at the very end, and I'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, I want to get straight into it. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the new Disney show, Loki. And straight away, John, I'm going to you, and I want, first of all, just your first impressions. Before we go into detail, what were your first impressions of the new show, Loki?
Straight away from the start, the pacing was so much more enjoyable. It's miles above Falcon and the Winter Soldier, in my opinion. And it was very much you wanted to watch it from start to finish without like really having to worry about here we go. It felt so refreshing, and Tom Hiddleston. Who doesn't like Tom Hiddleston on the screen?
What about you, Sam? What are your first impressions of Loki?
I loved it. I mean, like John said, as much as I enjoyed Falcon and the Winter Soldier,
you wanted to watch it from start to finish without like
pacing. I think
really
that
having to
show
worry about
really would have benefited from being
it felt so refreshing,
an all-in-one
and Tom
go thing
Hiddleston.
rather than a
Who doesn't like
weekly
Tom
show.
Hiddleston on the
Whereas,
screen?
like WandaVision, this looks like it's setting up mysteries and it's tempting you with things that you want to learn more about, and therefore it's going to be itching at you to want to see the next show next week. It's going to build up that hype and momentum. That's what the first episode's done so far. So strong start, really good. Really enjoyed it. Can't wait to see what comes next. Like WandaVision, this looks like it's setting up mysteries.
I thought I was going to enjoy it. But it has the perfect mix for me, which is storyline, visuals, and just kind of, I don't know how else to explain it, but the visual is that that's what's happening.
Strong start, really good, really enjoyed it.
Things I thought, but let's get into it straight away. Tom Hiddleston as Loki, but it has absolutely nails it every storyline, and I know there's a meme going around, which I found hilarious, is that everyone's explaining it with the plot, and it's just an image of topless
strong start, really good,
which I thought was hilarious. That guy is above. But let's get into
that wasn't the meme I saw. The meme I saw was the one with like some stones and just a reminder of those who died for paperweights.
We're going to get into that. That's spoilers. We all want to talk about that. And I'm just going to say this. If you've not watched Loki, do not watch from this point onwards, because we are going to be talking about
That wasn't the meme I saw.
Yes, guys,
the meme I saw was the one with like
returning to
some
Loki.
stones and just a reminder of those who died for paperweights.
It's literally like an extension of himself at this point. He just seamlessly jumps into it. It's so great to see.
Do not watch from this point.
I think the thing with Tom Hiddleston, with obviously like Sam says, making it his own. I think with that sort of making it his own, he can infuse it with his own charisma and his own presence there. I think that's something that's enjoyable that people love time and time again with Tom Hiddleston as Loki, that he brings a certain presence there. So, you know, most people I think were concerned with how would Tom Hiddleston would function as a character on his own, but like Owen Wilson works as a very good sub-character towards him, but with Tom pretty much can carry that show on his own. The Loki presence is such an amazing presence I think that's on-screen phenomenon that I enjoy seeing all the time, like that he brings a certain presence talking there. Thor, talking the Avengers, him just the scene on his own how I think works perfectly and functions. I'm looking forward to the exploring depth of the emotion and different sides of Loki that we haven't seen pretty much a lot of show on his own. The Loki presence is an amazing presence I think that's on-screen phenomenon that I enjoy seeing all the time, like that he brings a certain presence talking Thor, talking the Avengers, him just the scene on his own how I think works perfectly and functions. I'm looking forward to the exploring depth of the emotion and different sides of Loki that we haven't seen pretty much a lot of show on his own. The Loki presence is an amazing presence I think that's on-screen phenomenon that I enjoy seeing all the time, like that he brings a certain presence talking Thor, talking the Avengers, him just the scene on his own how I think works perfectly and functions. I'm looking forward to the exploring depth of the emotion and different sides of Loki that we haven't seen pretty much a lot of show on his own.
How do you think Tom Hiddleston's performance was in regards to trying to convey this emotion of, again, losing his mother? I thought he actually did better and had more kind of emphasis during this TV show than he did in the actual movie. John?
Different sides of Loki that we haven't seen. Yeah, it was. So in the first one, we just knew he was upset. Well, when we saw him in Dark World, sorry, we just knew he was upset about his mother. But like this, it explained why the remorse was so strong. Was that obviously his connection to his mother, but he was also partially to blame for it, and harboring that guilt and remorse for the loss of someone so close to him. Just see it conveyed in that one scene with his eyes below, and you can just tell the expression. It really hits. It really hit me in quite with a bit of an impact that I didn't think Tom Hiddleston could convey that level of emotion, because in For Dark World it's very much rushed, where he just sat there for it. He's obviously done all the tearing, crying. It's just like the aftermath of it, really. Just see it conveyed. So yeah, it was good to see that fresh emotion in his eyes from start to finish. It really hit me in quite with a bit of an impact that I didn't think Tom Hiddleston could convey that level of emotion.
He started the episode off
very much rushed, where he just sat there. He's obviously done all the tearing, crying. It's just like
he's got his
the aftermath of it, really.
Aggressive.
Just see it conveyed. So yeah, it was good to see that fresh emotion in his eyes from start to finish. It really hit me in
taking that stance to seeing his vulnerable side. The great thing about that
convey that level of emotion.
He started behind off and swapped from one to the other. Very much is just it's brilliant to see. He does it so well, and you do empathize and feel with the character a lot as a result, because you can kind of, some people can kind of relate to it to an extent. We've all lost someone that we care about, and it's when you see it portrayed so realistically in that manner on the show, it makes it so easy to kind of identify with the character and sympathize with the situation, and actually root for him. And you need that setup, particularly for a character like Loki, who is traditionally a villain. You need that setup to be able to carry the rest of the show through, and he's just spot on. Yeah. Nothing I can say.
And apologies if people have been listening. They have been told there's an echo issue. I think I've fixed it now. So hopefully, this is the things with live stream. We had people talking over each other by slightly, but hopefully it's going to be all right now. This is what I love about first time live. These sort of things will happen. But go on, John. You wanted to add a point there.
Yeah, so I think the thing that was really important to me, and really important to probably a lot of the Loki fans, is the fact that Loki, to the core, while he's always portrayed as the villain, because they explained that he's needed to be the villain at the right times, that essentially he's a good person that just wants to be accepted, I think. And I think, that's a real message that can be conveyed really well, that these apparent villains, or the anti-heroes like Loki, are just effectively acting out of pure wanting to be accepted and feel important, have a reason for being. And I think this series conveys that it's not just black and white. There is elements of grey, very much like WandaVision did, that it wasn't just cut down the middle, this is good, this is bad. There's that bit in the middle, and I think that's where Loki and maybe Wanda are very similar in the characteristics. They both act in selfish ways, but not necessarily trying to be selfish in some ways, or trying to pretend as if they are selfish when they're really not. It's about the what they want deep down, and I think that was watching the emotions and him admitting this and admitting to himself, I think was a huge step for a first episode of anything, for a character to move towards. It's incredible.
Now, I've absolutely loved Tom's performance this one episode, and I think this is a 6-episode series. I want to say 6 episodes. I didn't actually think they were going to be hour long. I thought they were only going to be 30 minutes, but for the hour that was, not much actually happened in a sense. He was just in one place, but it always kept you interested. And one of the things which I found probably the funniest, but also the most interesting, that we have kind of referenced just before, was the Power Stones, Infinity Stones, the Soul Stone, were literally just in a drawer, and people were using them as paperweights as if they were absolutely nothing. All of those sacrifices the characters made, all of the battles and everything like that, and literally this time agency just like, oh yeah, I've got a spare one. Here, have a time stone. Go nuts. And the fact that Loki, as soon as he saw that, just, you could see the realization of, these guys are a lot bigger, they're a lot scarier than Thanos. I need to be on the ball here. And I know he's playing this whole I'm going to join them side, but with it being Loki, he always has an ulterior motive. Do you think he is just going to play a ball and join them, or do you think he's always going to have that little mischievous side hiding in the background?
I think it's part of the nature of who the character is. He's always going to want to be the most powerful being out there. So he will join with whoever is the strongest party at that point to get what he wants, basically. And I do think we're going to see that. Now, whether that's how the show is going to pan out, it might well be that his arc will be that he learns that power isn't everything. That is certainly a possibility. Or it might well be that, I mean, we're assuming this is going to be one series. It might well be that they plan to do 2, 3, 4. So it might well be that we see something like this progress over the years, and maybe the story will branch out in different ways. So there's many ways they can take this. It doesn't necessarily have to end in one or the other. It could be a middle ground, like maybe he does ascend to a more powerful position, but not the most powerful position, and tries to help maintain a balance in the universe based on his power. There's so many ways I can see this going. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
John?
Yeah, I guess the thing for me is the fact that I think the big integral part of the context from the first episode, he just wants to be a part of something bigger. And when he's told that actually you have no relevance, this is your line, this is your lot in life, you could see it hit Loki. And I think that's the thing that probably will come of this series, is he won't just fall into history, he won't just fall out of context. I think Tom Hiddleston is so important to Disney and Marvel at the moment that they will find a way for him in the writing plot where he becomes more integral and may even come back to the MCU. I would never say never on anything. So I agree with yourself. I don't think he's gonna. I think he'll play ball up until he can see a potential to have the upper hand, and he's already exploited to a degree of one person in the TVA. So it's not like they're not defeatable. It's not like they're upper gods, but these people are policing time itself, so they fall into a different remit of authority. So I think if he can put himself in a place above that authority where he can make the decisions, he could probably fall back into the timeline some way and be more integral.
Yeah, and we've also got to mention the other main star, which is Owen Wilson. I always get those brothers mixed up, but Owen Wilson, he still has that comedic side. Like, just as soon as you hear him talk, straight away you just think of all the comedy films that he's done, but he's actually playing more of a serious but likable character. And I actually really liked him straight away. I really like this character in this relationship, and he seems to have this respect for Loki as well, and understands who Loki is, what Loki's about, which kind of has me worried a little bit in the fact that originally when I was watching it, why did he know so much about Loki? And then obviously in a bit of an ending episode, spoiler here, but there is another variant of Loki, which I want to talk about a theory in a minute. But there's a variant of Loki that is actually the bad guy. But what did you think of is it Morbius?
Yeah, I think it's Morbius. Major
so Owen
Morbius.
Wilson's Morbius.
Yeah.
I'm really, really gutted and go, wow. I was really waiting for that. Yeah. I was
Actually,
waiting for it to drop the
before
first
go
one.
ahead, I want to hear your best Owen Wilson's wows. Sam, I want you to go first. I want your best Owen Wilson wow.
Wow.
Okay, that was all right. John, let's hear yours.
Wow.
That
I went
was
a bit too
absolutely
high-pitched
terrible.
there.
And here goes
I know.
mine. Are you ready? I just picture that turtle in the back of my mind. Wow. So, safe to say we all suck.
Probably.
So anyway, go on, continue. Owen Wilson thoughts, John.
Yeah, he came across very Owen Wilson. Like his characteristics was hit the way. At first, that's how it felt. It was like, oh, it's just Owen Wilson playing Owen Wilson, like he's done in dozens of other films. But then when you get towards the end of the episode, you see this depth, this understanding, almost like you say, appreciation towards Loki. It was a different sort of chemistry than I've seen with Owen Wilson in any of the films. It was a mutual respect almost to Loki and his craft of who he is and how he's achieved such feats in previous. I do have a theory on the villain. It isn't as straightforward as it's going to be, I think. But I think, just the fact that he approached Loki, I don't necessarily think it was because he needs Loki in order to defeat whoever this is. I do feel like it's more, he's picked Loki for a reason. He's studied Loki for a reason. And yes, it could be to do with a hunch, but I also think it's an admiration for Loki, and it could be something that could help Loki get a second chance almost. But I really do like the on-screen chemistry with Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston.
Sam?
So I think from the off, when we saw him in that first scene in the church in France, it was quite clear that he was generally he comes across as a likable character. He's very charming, and I mean you see him with the little girl, and the little girl instantly takes to him from the off. My thinking with that though is that genuinely who the character is, or is this something that is trying to lull the audience into that false sense of security with him? Are we going to maybe see a twist later on that maybe there's something about him that we're not seeing, possibly? Because the way he acts with that little girl, we then see that again with Loki. That's how the whole this is your life scene pans out. He doesn't raise his voice, he doesn't get angry, he doesn't threaten Loki. It's just, look, these are the facts. This is what I see. What do you see? And he very quickly is able to break down the walls that we mentioned earlier that the Loki puts up, that Loki uses to defend who he is and how he really feels. So there's a nagging feeling in the back of my head that they're doing this because there's something else that they haven't shown us yet with Mobius that they could be waiting to kind of pull out later on. It's a little too nice, if you see what I mean.
But then again, if they just made characters boring, there wouldn't be much of a storyline, because I think Loki is confirmed to have a season 2. I think it's safe to say that. And what I do want to bring in, because I don't want to spend too much on Loki, we could talk for hours on Loki, but I do want to bring up the ending again. If you haven't watched Loki, please mute for the next couple of minutes. But there's watching so much TV, you kind of pick up on cues that there's something not right. And what I mean by that is, in the ending, they revealed that the variant of Loki is the bad guy. But why didn't they show his face? And if they've already revealed that Loki is the bad guy, they would show Loki, which means there is something wrong with this variant. Now, they are starting to build more on Norse mythology, and this is a conversation I was having with my daughter as well. And straight away, she was like, that's Lady Loki. That is not Loki that we know. It's a different kind of stream. There's been a big thing on the gender fluidity of Loki on social media, and they've been pushing the gender fluidity character, where he is the he version and there's going to be a she version, but Loki himself is gender fluid. I'm trying to describe the character but the orientation, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be, they're going to have that twist because they haven't showed the face, which means that there is going to be a twist, and I think they are going to pull in Lady Loki. Now, John, you were saying that the twist was kind of obvious to you. Is that where you think they were going with that?
So I have two theories. Lady Loki was one of them, because Lady Loki has been a very big fan thing for the last 5 or 6 years. I would say probably a lot longer than that. Lady Loki, you see cosplayers do it. You see there's a lot of art out there. There's a big fandom for Lady Loki. But my second one is probably more devil related. Now, I don't think Mephisto, because we've already brought that out dozens of times during WandaVision, and I think Mephisto is the kind of being that this just wouldn't be of interest to him. But I do think it could be a devil-related character that could fall into place with the likes of Wanda and Doctor Strange film. Somehow, this is one of the hint things that hasn't been dropped yet, maybe, and part of the multiverse.
That Loki has a direct tie-in, a few tie-ins to Doctor Strange in the multiverse. Supposedly it's linked more to Doctor Strange than anything we've seen so far.
Yeah, so with that sort of in mind there, I do think it could be potentially devil related, because it might not directly be like the bad guy that's going to then pass over into there, but I think Nightmare is supposed to be Nightmare, is it? I believe that's in the Doctor Strange film anyway. But I think it could potentially be that, like showing that Marvel can go on a wider scope, because let's be honest, we wanted that with WandaVision. We were hoping Winter Soldier and Falcon would bring something towards one of the future films. So I think potentially that could be something that steers towards the direction. Who knows? We've theorized this before countless of times, WandaVision, so I could be completely wrong. But it'd be nice to see a setup like that.
What about you, Sam? What do you think?
I think Lady Loki is certainly a good bet. I mean, like you said, the series is meant to tie into Multiverse of Madness, and they've actually outright used the term multiverse in this episode. It's actually a core point of the plot. So it could well be that Lady Loki is an alternate version of Loki from another timeline, from another universe. So I think that's probably quite a high probable possibility, to be honest. Yeah, I can see that happening quite easily, especially if it's to tie in with Doctor Strange.
What are the chances now, with you seeing these theories, it's starting to come to me now, the stained glass window showed the devil character and the child within it, who I think is possibly Lady Loki in disguise, because obviously shape-shifting kind of change of perception. I think that would have been very, very clever, as in being there to see who the enemy is.
Yeah.
But I think, and I'm just going to throw this out there, this is what I'm thinking right now, we will see Lady Loki, but it'll be Mephisto embodying Lady Loki and being the big reveal at the end that, yes, it's Lady Loki all the way through the season, because I think we'll get that reveal in episode 2. and then I think at the end of the season it'll be Mephisto, and then that will lead into Doctor Strange 2. That's going to be my guess for now. Could be totally wrong. But overall, I think Loki has had probably the best season opener of all of the Marvel TV shows. I just think visually it was stunning. I loved the design. I just loved everything about it, and it just didn't feel like an hour. It really just flew by in the best possible way. Final thoughts on Loki episode 1, guys.
The DB Cooper, is it DB Cooper? When he did that scene was brilliant. I loved it. It was so smooth and just the right amount of cheese and comedy. That summed up
you mean the
Tom
Loki
episode.
Hiddleston application to become James Bond?
Pretty much, yeah.
Sam?
I think for me, the tone of the show was set within the first 5 minutes when he's in the desert and he gets punched and you just see it in slow-mo and you're like, has it just done a normal slow-mo? And then you see the agents moving around. It's like, you're moving at 16 speed, but you're feeling this in real time. And you know full well, just from that moment, what the show is going to be like. And you know it's going to be a lot of fun. It's just going to be brilliant to watch. And the first episode literally just carried that tone on throughout the entire episode. It was so great to watch. And I'm definitely excited for what's to come. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing.
First time in a long time, people have actually been excited for Wednesdays. Is that just me? But all of a sudden, Wednesdays just feel like something you're really looking forward to again.
So an interesting fact I've read is apparently, despite the fact it's premiered on Wednesday, the numbers for Loki have been higher than any other Marvel show that's aired so far. It's done insanely well.
It's
probably
not been.
Why it's already had season 2 confirmed.
I've got to be honest with you. I've not been excited for Wednesdays since Orange Wednesdays, when you used to get 2 for 1 at cinema. It's the last time.
And for anyone in the US, the Orange Wednesdays was a cinema scheme where you basically got buy one get one free, which obviously hasn't been around for a while because cinemas haven't been around for a while as well. Just looking at the chat as well, one of the great things of live streaming, we can actually get comments as we go through. And Natalie has said, hands down, the best start to a Marvel series so far. And totally agree, Natalie, so thank you for that. I do want to move on now because we will be talking Loki every week for the next 6 weeks, guaranteed. But moving on, we have had some movie news this week, and one of them is quite exciting because it's local to me, and that is Indiana Jones 5 has started filming, but more importantly, it's been filming down the road from me. And it's got a bit hectic on social media, and people have started stalking Harrison Ford around Newcastle. To the point where Harrison's had to say, could you back up? It's still a pandemic. I need my space. But yeah, hopefully Harrison's all right. Please, if you are in the Northeast, please leave him be. We do want him to feel safe and to be able to film Indiana Jones 5. But what about you guys? Are you an Indiana Jones fan? What were your thoughts on Indiana Jones 3, the last film that it had? There was no fourth film. We're just jumping straight to Indiana Jones 5 for this one. On this podcast, Indiana Jones 4 does not exist. Deal with it, people. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Indiana Jones 5? Is it needed? Is it good?
Go on, Sam.
Okay. Now remind, because I think I've only seen 2 of them. I think 3 is the one where he goes after the Holy Grail, isn't it?
Yes, so you've got Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is the Ark of the Covenant. Indiana Jones 2, which is technically Indiana Jones 1 because it's a prequel, which a lot of people don't realise. But Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom is actually chronologically, time-wise, the first one. Then you have Raiders of the Lost Ark. Then you have The Last Crusade with the late Sean Connery. Then you have Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. And then you have the 5th one that we're filming now.
So I've only seen Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade. I've only seen those 2. And Temple of Doom I've only seen once when I was very, very young. Last Crusade, I think I've seen a couple of times, and I remember it being so well done. Back in the age when practical effects took prominence, and you saw scenes like when the Nazi melted. It was, I mean, to this day, it's still horrifying, but it's so well done. I think if they'd have left it there, no one would have complained. No one would be screaming, "We want another one," or a remake, because that kind of wrapped the story up as it was. My concern now is, will Harrison Ford be able to continue doing this much longer? Because if they're going to keep trying to do this, so some of the things I've been hearing is this could be like a passing of the torch. He's going to maybe hand this over to someone else, and they're going to continue the stories down the road, and we'll still explore that universe, but through someone else's eyes, which I think might be an interesting thing to see. It's got to be done a certain way. This is a very, very beloved franchise. It's got a very, very loyal fan base, and if they mess it up, well, we've seen what happens when they mess it up. Do we really want a repeat of that? Is what I would say.
Well, the last film they had, The Last Crusade, was brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's no Indiana Jones 4. No, it doesn't exist.
I'm talking about the Quantum Mirror that I viewed, where somehow they made a fourth one, but that never happened here.
That direct-to-DVD that was never made. But John, thoughts on Indiana Jones, the fifth film? Is it needed?
Honestly, I enjoyed Indiana Jones 1, 2, and 3. I was excited to go watch the fourth in the cinema. And then I was excited to dislodge it from my brain entirely and forget it ever existed. Shia LaBeouf was probably one of the worst parts of that film that I will forever thank him for. I think this will be a passing of the torch, or completely like, boom, this is over now. This is not going to be like Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible, going to end up with 10, and then over the next 5 or 6 years. I think this is it. I think this will be a lid on it, and then we'll probably get a reboot in another 20 years' time. Do I feel like they need another one? I don't. I think after the fourth one being such a really bad sequel to the third, that's just going, you know what, let's cut our losses, let's just leave it at that. It's nice now that Harrison Ford is only just down the road. I can say that too. I'm in the Northeast now. Yay. And it's cool that obviously he's bringing it over. It's being filmed over in the UK as well. I just think that now, like, Harrison's getting to that age where, can he really still do all the stunts that we expect Indiana Jones to do? Is it going to look out of place? There are a lot of questions like that. And, it's really cool that for a guy of his age is going to try and retake this role on again. But for me personally, I'm not a big Indiana Jones fan anyway. But also logically, I just don't feel like it's needed.
See, I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan. It's probably blurred out, but my Indiana Jones DVDs are just literally behind me there. And amazingly, it's only 3 of the DVDs there. Don't know why. But I just think it's a beloved franchise, as Sam said. A fifth film, you know what? I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I had no expectations for number 4. I think everyone's realised number 4 was just wrong. And I think, knowing that, they will go into number 5 thinking, we've got to do this right. The way I see it is, they know Harrison can no longer continue doing Indiana Jones after the 5th one. So this has to be Harrison's swan song. What I think they're going to do, and Natalie's also mentioned it in the chat as well, saying that there's been some shots of what looks like a young Indiana Jones. And I think if they introduce a younger Indiana Jones in the 5th film, they've then got that segue into doing future Indiana Jones with an actor who is the young Indiana Jones, so you still have that link, and then you can swap it on its head. So in the 5th one, it'll be flashbacks to young, current Indiana Jones, and then in the next film, it'd be an entire film on young Indiana Jones, but it might have a little scene with Harrison Ford, like a little kind of him telling a story to a class or telling a story to his grandkids or something like that, and have that little Harrison Ford nod in it as well. And I'd quite like that. I like the character of Indiana Jones. I like the story, and I think having that kind of way of doing it might be really interesting. Tiffany's saying in the chat as well that I'm all for this. Can't wait to see what it brings. And I'm definitely in the let's bring on more Indiana Jones, let's keep this character going and tell the right story, which is what I think everybody is wanting. And on that note, I think we will move on because we have very little time left. But there's been some other news, some Netflix news, two lots of Netflix news, and one of them is the WitcherCon. Netflix is doing an online convention. They're calling it a con, but basically it's going to be a bunch of videos, let's be fair. And it is going to be to celebrate the game from CD Projekt Red and the series of Netflix. And they've actually done a lovely bit of artwork, which you can see if you're watching the video, where they've actually made Henry Cavill look like he is in the game. Which makes me think, is there going to be a future Witcher game where it's going to be based more on the Henry Cavill side than it will be on the game side? And obviously we've had a few sneak peeks of Season 2 as well, specifically a video based on Ciri. But what about you guys? Are you guys Witcher fans? Have you seen any of the previews? Have you played any of the games? Are you excited about seeing what comes out on July 9th? John, we'll start with you.
I absolutely love the series. I enjoyed everything from the costumes, the script, the story, even the actors playing him. Henry Cavill, need more Henry Cavill. From the, like you said, from the graphic, it looked like we could get a Henry Cavill either DLC for the third one, which is everybody still plays religiously to this day. So that'd be really cool, or an entirely new game that has him there. However, I do think the two need to separate because the two franchises operate differently at different time periods. I am looking forward to the WitcherCon because it'd be nice to see what they come from it. I think the franchise as a whole has been quite successful among the fans, both the series and the game in play. I know they're on about doing the prequel, obviously, to the Witcher series, which will be good. But I'd also like to see maybe a release of more books as well, because the books were incredibly enjoyable as well to read. I'm just really excited, and I want more Cavill. I think Henry Cavill's a fantastic actor. He seems like a fantastic character. He's a geek among us all anyway. And him having in a game probably isn't the worst thing either.
Sam?
So I'm not particularly keen on The Witcher.
Thanks, Sam, for having you on.
That's Sam done. Yeah. So, yeah, my thoughts on No, go on, Sam. I always like having difference of opinions.
So I'll make it clear. I'm not in any way saying it's bad or anything like that. The problem I have with... Because obviously the one thing that everyone finds very prominent with it is the games. With it being a huge open world game, unfortunately, I don't have the time I would like to spend on something like that, playing a game of that type, and that's why it's difficult for me to get into that franchise. So it's nothing against The Witcher itself. I've got no problem with it. It's difficult for me to get into. However, I have had a little bit of interaction with the franchise through a different one, actually, because Geralt is a guest character in Soul Calibur 6, which leads me into the point I was going to make next, where it is potentially entirely possible that we could have a game where Cavill's Geralt and the game Geralt do actually meet, because the way he's introduced in Soul Calibur is he finds a dimensional portal and he ends up traveling to Soul Calibur's world. So it could well be that we could see something like that happen in either the games or some other form of media that allow the two to meet and interact with each other. That's possibly something that could happen based on the picture that we've seen. Maybe.
That'd be interesting. I'd like to see that, like seeing the kind of interaction between them. Definitely not in the TV show. I wouldn't want that. But in the game, you have that kind of escape from realism. So things like that are just kind of like, yeah, it's a game. That's allowed. But I love the Siri preview and seeing her slowly becoming the badass that we all know she will become. And I'm really excited for July 9th. Now, I was never a big fan of Game of Thrones. I watched it all, but I'm not a big fan of shows that have too much gore and nudity and things like that, like the shock factor. Whereas The Witcher has all of that stuff, but it has it right. It's about the story, and then those things happen as part of the story. And I think they've got a really good mix of that, where it has an enjoyable, mature show, but still has the characters, the core, the storytelling in place. I think a lot of people were switched off in season 1 because of the time jumps, whereas season 2, everything's caught up, which means everything is in current time. But I think we're going to get a full trailer on July 9th for the TV series, and hopefully a release date. But I don't know if it might be too soon for a release date, because I know they only just finished filming recently. But I'm sure we might get a perspective release date, saying maybe coming winter 2021.
We've already had one. It was it's winter 2021.
I don't know if that might get pushed back. If not, it could happen. Not that I'd mind. I'd rather things were pushed back and were done right than not being pushed back, which is hilarious. And we're saying that when we have CG Project Red, who had problems with Cyberpunk, but we're not going to go into that. But I will say that actually Cyberpunk failing is probably the best thing that happened to the game industry. So now that games can now be pushed back without uproar from fans. But yeah, excited for WitcherCon. That should be really interesting. Next thing in regards to Netflix, and I'm really excited about this series, and they just recently announced the cast, and I think this is an absolutely brilliant bit of casting, and that is Lance Reddick is going to be playing Albert Wesker in the Resident Evil TV series. Now, I absolutely loved and adored Lance in Lost, and he was absolutely amazing in the TV show Fringe. And he just has that kind of very dull, menacing sort of vibe when he talks that will give some oomph to the character of Wesker. What do you guys think of an idea of a Resident Evil series that is kind of got characters from Resident Evil, but it's a totally different universe in a sense and telling a totally different story? Sam, you're nodding your head like crazy there. We'll go with you first. What are your thoughts on this?
So I love Resident Evil massively, and I know this is one of 3 TV and film projects that are on the go at the minute, because Netflix currently have 2. There's this and there's Infinite Darkness as well, which I think Infinite Darkness is a lot closer to the games than this will be. And
Infinite Darkness is pretty much a sequel to Resident Evil 2, so it's directly connected to the games.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice to see a what if, and I think a lot of people need to bear that in mind with the casting, because I can kind of foresee people looking at Lance Reddick as Wesker and saying, yeah, but he's nothing like the video game. Yeah, but this franchise in particular, or this element of the franchise, isn't aligned perfectly with the games. It is meant to be its own separate entity from the game timeline that exists in its own little bubble. It's more like a what if sort of scenario, and I think it's going to be interesting to explore that. And as you say, I watched Lance Reddick in Fringe, and he was absolutely brilliant. And the other franchise a lot of people mentioned to me when we were watching the stream, because I was watching it with a few friends, is John Wick, where he was absolutely brilliant in that as well. So I think when it comes to having the capacity to play the role, he's gonna do absolutely amazing at it. I've got no doubt in my mind he's gonna handle it brilliantly. I think people just need to remember that they need to divorce it a little bit from what they already know about the franchise and see it as its own little unique concept that just happens to use some of the characters and elements from the Resident Evil franchise.
John?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Sam's saying. For me personally, casting is not necessarily an issue unless it's an integral part of like the story or the characters or the relevance there. In terms of Resident Evil live action to game, we know, as you know, from the previous films, for example, haven't gone exactly to how the games are. So because of that, I think there's an audience, for me personally, there's already a ideology set in about live action Resident Evil comparatively to animation slash computer games. So that ideology set in. I've not watched him in many things, but I have watched John Wick, and I have watched bits of Fringe. So I do think that he probably is going to be a very intimidating and very much Wesker-like. I've got confidence in that sense there. For me, it's about the story as a whole. My biggest concern is not so much one particular actor, but the story as a whole, because I haven't really enjoyed the live-action Resident Evils as much. So I'm hoping the series takes a new stance on it and goes more in terms of really integral. It goes into in depth on these integral characters like Wesker. But I'm really excited. Most Netflix shows have been quite successful, and I don't think there's many that haven't been. So it'd be nice to see what they can do with the series here.
Yeah, totally agree. And I'm one of those people that it's all about the story and the characters, and as long as the cast do what the story needs, I don't see a problem with it at all. Look at the Resident Evil films. They tried to recreate the games but do a twist, and it just didn't gel. That was because they had two conflictings. They had their own story and had the game stories, and they just conflicted. Whereas this is kind of a linear kind of story, so they know exactly what they want to tell, and therefore if other characters come in, they come in, but it won't affect the story that they are wanting to tell, which I am perfectly happy with. Give me Lance Reddick playing any character he wants, and I will sign up for that, Resident Evil or not. And finally, to finish off our podcast, I want to talk games. I absolutely adore computer games. Some people do, some people don't, but E3 is something that cannot be ignored, and there's been some absolutely brilliant announcements, and as you guys were talking, I've just been checking it out as well. Halo Infinite is still scheduled for Christmas, even though there's complaints about that, and it looks like Master Chief is getting a new version of Cortana. Cortana's the baddie right now, the original Cortana, and now they are making a new version of Cortana to go with Master Chief, which is very interesting. And they've changed the character model. She now has claws. The geeks are gonna rampage, but that's a different story. Ubisoft have announced a range of different games as well, and one of the main ones which people are talking about is the new Mario and Rabbids Connection, which is Sparks of Hope, which looks really fun, and they announced a new Rainbow Six game which involved a kind of zombie plague, which was very interesting. And yeah, and also one of the most anticipated games of the year as well is Elden Ring, which is a co-production with the writer of Games of Thrones. So it's been a very interesting week. It's ongoing right now in regards to E3. But what about you guys? Are you big on gaming? Are you that bothered about E3? Personally, I absolutely love and adore it. But that's just me. John, are you big on the gaming? Is there any games that you're really looking forward to with your PlayStation 5? Oh, wait. No.
Salt in the wound there, man. I will be getting one later on this year, probably, with everything that's been announced. Elden Ring really appeals to me. I like it. It's kind of the sort of genre of game I play. I wouldn't say big on gaming, but when there's certain games like Ghost of Tsushima, for example, really pulled me in. I always look for those sort of games. They really get me and they grip me because the story's so great, and then this world they build around it is amazing. Mario probably will pass on. There's also, I believe, there was an Avatar game, wasn't there?
Yep, there's an Avatar game that has been announced by Ubisoft as well. I am not too worried about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really enjoy the. I'm probably gonna like slated for this one, but I didn't enjoy the film so much. But I saw the trailer and read a bit on the Avatar itself, and the game itself looks quite interesting. So that's another one that might appeal to me more because I might enjoy the game more than I did the films itself, which is not necessarily an uncommon thing. Resident Evil being like prime example. But yeah, I think some of the E3 does release some really good stuff. Xbox news isn't really relevant for me as such because I don't actually own an Xbox. But the Halo franchise I know is incredibly has got a huge fan base out there, and I've played a few of the Halos myself when we've gamed with mates and that, and they were really enjoyable. So they're only going to get bigger and better.
Sam?
So E3 this year to me is quite an interesting one because we've actually seen it before the pandemic. It was actually starting to decline. In terms of your major platform holders, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. Nintendo were the first to start pulling out, and then Sony pulled out at I think it was the last one just before the pandemic hit. Obviously, we didn't have it last year, but all of a sudden, they've now all got a presence this year for this E3, which is rather interesting considering how they were trying to move away from it and do their own kind of thing. So it's nice to see that we've got these companies all kind of arranging a more of a big event together to get the hype and get the interest going, rather than we're just going to separate out and do our own thing and everything's a bit more kind of spread out and less cohesive. In terms of stuff that I've seen that's interested me, I'd say the biggest one for me, which wasn't technically announced for E3, but we saw more of it for E3, is Streets of Rage 4. For anyone who's been playing it, it came out last year. We've got DLC coming at some point this year, and the guys who worked on it, Emu and Lizard Cube, have done a massively good job in terms of bringing it into a more modern audience. It's so much fun to play, and we've had little like teasers and hints as to what's coming in the DLC. They've more or less revealed everything now, and we've just seen more and more gameplay footage of what's to come, and it looks absolutely brilliant. I cannot wait for that DLC to hit. It's going to be awesome, absolutely awesome.
Yep, and as I've said, I'm a huge E3 fan. I have an Xbox, I have a PlayStation, I have a Switch. You can see all of my retro consoles hidden behind me there, the Dreamcast, the Wii, the N64. There's an old Xbox and PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 2 all hidden behind me. I love gaming, and E3 is like Christmas for me. And I'm just excited to see what's coming out. Square Enix have a panel pretty much straight after the end of this podcast, in the next hour or so. And they will be announcing more Final Fantasy news. I can't see them announcing the Kingdom Hearts game, but who knows? But I'm really excited to see that. But yeah, that is it. That is our hour of the Spodcast live. And I believe it's went all right, other than that little audio blip at the start, which was my fault because I had the YouTube video playing on a separate tab so I could check the audio was working, but then muted it, but didn't push pause, so therefore it was still playing on the stream. But I know for next week. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you to everyone that's watched. If you're listening to the audio, hopefully you'll join us on a future live one. Even if you haven't watched live, please let us know in the comments what you thought about Loki, Indiana Jones 5, the games, and everything like that. Greatly appreciate all of your time and who you are. But as always, I like to end by giving our guests a chance to just say who they are, where we can find you, and everything like that, in case people just want to continue the conversation and chat to them. So, Sam, if anybody wants to talk to you, where can we find you on social media?
So most social media, I go by my username, SuperSonicSJM. I am also a Twitch streamer. In fact, this month, I'm going to slightly shamelessly plug here. For the entirety of June, I am raising money for a charity called Mind Out. They are an LGBTQ plus mental health charity, and I'm doing that in partnership with Sega as part of their fundraising team. So we're helping to raise money for Pride this month. I'm playing loads and loads of Sega games on my channel. That's usually on a Monday or a Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday, at about 7 p.m. If you can help us out, please do spread the word. Pop into one of my streams. I'll have a donate link there if you can donate. I would appreciate that as well. But yeah, Instagram, Twitter, same username. Come find me. Come check me out.
Brilliant. Cheers for that, and good luck with the stream. I love Sega, if you can't tell from the background of all the Sonics. John, if anyone would like to find you, where can we find you?
As always, all complaints, general upset, comments or anything I may have said or offended, find me at Multiverse Geek Man on Instagram.
And that's where I send all of my complaints as well. But again, thank you so much, guys, for joining me on this first live stream. Thank you for everyone who's even just popped in for a few minutes. You're not even here right now, but thank you anyway. And if you want to find me, it's obviously CJ the Geek. But obviously, check out SpoilerTV.com for more news, promos, sneak peeks, and hit that subscribe button so you can get alerts the next time we go live, which will hopefully be next Sunday, an hour behind from now, because I think we're going to do this live every week now. I think it's way more fun. So thank you very much. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next week.